there, and welcome to Your Worth, Your Way, the podcast that's all about helping you understand that you are worthy of prioritizing your own joy without feeling selfish or guilty. I'm Debbie Lucas, the Joy Alchemist, and each week I'll be bringing you honest, heartfelt conversations with incredible guests, coaches, thought leaders, and soulful humans who'll share their stories and insights on self-worth, confidence, personal growth, and how to create a life that feels authentically yours. This isn't about quick fixes or cookie cutter advice. It's about real talk, practical takeaways, and plenty of soulful inspiration to help you live life your way. So grab your favorite cuppa, get comfy, and let's dive into today's episode. Today, I am joined by the inspiring Angela Bargerstock, a multidimensional frequency architect and soul whisperer with 25 years in the health and wellness trenches as a registered nurse. She helps highly sensitive women stop shape-shifting to fit the external world and start living full spectrum lives, using a potent mix of science, spirit, and surgical precision to tune them into the song of their soul. Oh, I got goosebumps when I said that. And today we'll be diving into the difference between performative alignment and true embodiment, and how to feel a difference in your body, and also how to sit in that in-between space and to recognize that you can have both and not either or. Welcome, Angela. It's lovely to have you on the show with me today.
I'm so happy to be here, and I'm really excited about our conversation because I feel that this is a big one for so many women especially, but humans at this time, bringing in that unity and also that embodiment, because I feel like it is a piece that a lot of us missed, in our earlier lives. So it's a perfect time on the planet to really reunite ourselves and each other.
Yeah, amazing. And yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into that. We've already had some conversation off screen and I had to pause ourselves because we were getting right into it. So keen to bring that to the listeners and my audience today. But you and I have been connected for a little while now, and we've had a couple of conversations, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about you and what led to the work that you're doing right now.
Yes, you did. You did a great intro, and of course, we as like divine humans, we're always evolving, right? So I have been in the healthcare space for 25 plus years now. Started out as a registered nurse, and most of the viewers probably know, when you're in healthcare, you're in those kind of fields, there is a lot of stress. There is a tremendous amount of focus on the external, so getting everything right. We don't want to kill people, so we want to get everything right, watch everything external, make sure everyone is okay. And for me, that led to burnout, it led to chronic anxiety, it led to eventually life-threatening asthma, so physical symptoms. And again, being in the medical field, I went through the channels, reaching out to my doctor, reaching out for medications, and ultimately realizing that the fix, quote unquote, had to come from inside of me. No one external to me, no medication, no pill, no process was going to bring me back to center, to wholeness, or to any state of what you might call healing. So that was where my journey started, really, as far as the work that I do now. And it really has been a fusion of bringing everything back to center, coming home to myself, the scientific part of me, my nurse brain, all my clinical skills, and expanding that into the energetic field and what I now call the bio-spiritual field. Because I feel that is our next evolution as humans, like you mentioned, both and. We're not just a bag of bones and skin and thoughts and emotions, there is something beyond that. And when we bring that union back into our body, it's a really beautiful thing, and it makes life so much more juicy and so much more fun. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much. And, I think, a lot of us in this space have come from helping professions. Other people have come from corporate, but have been helpers within their corporate careers. And I just love how, we can grow and evolve from our experience, and that we can then use that coupled with all the other knowledge and wisdom that we've learned along the way for ourselves to then go forth and help other people. And it truly is, there's so many both ands in what you were talking about just there in your little introduction. You can be a registered nurse and a healer and a life coach, whatever, whatever you're calling yourself. You can be, like I'm a social worker, and I can be a life coach and a spiritual healer, and we can be both human 3D persons, beings, and we can be spiritual, and I love how we start kind of integrating that. And as you say, as we become more aware, that those lines kind of blur, and it doesn't have to be the either or.
Yeah. Well, and that we don't have to, we also, I think it's the meaning we attach. I talk to a lot of people in the spiritual circles where the ego is demonized. You're speaking from your ego, you're in the identity. Well, we need an identity and we need an ego to kind of do business in the world. If we were all just formless spirit, we wouldn't be here on the planet having fun creating podcasts and doing our work in the world and interacting and having relationships. Like there is a structure that's so helpful there. So I find, reframing is huge. Like, not only do we get to have both and we get to have it all, we are worthy of it all. We deserve to have it all. This is how we were created. We're created to be in a body, to have all these beautiful physical things that we have, but to have connection to the energy behind them, the consciousness behind them, and to have the ego and to have the mind and to have our heart and emotions. Like that's something that I'm really passionate about, because I feel like, and I certainly can speak for myself, you've heard a little bit of my story. I feel like most of us do not routinely every single day live in that unified state. And that's something we can aspire to at the same time as being okay with where we are now. It's not something we need to put outside of ourselves and go, I'm going to be happy when I'm 100% unified. Like, no, that's the journey. That's why we're here.
Oh,
In my
absolutely.
opinion.
And,
Yeah.
so much of what you were saying there around, the consciousness, the ego, the mind, the emotions, for me, it is about being conscious and aware, that it's the ego is a part of us. You're never going to, you shouldn't want to kind of like obliterate that altogether or block that altogether, because the ego serves a purpose. The ego is there to keep us safe, the ego or the unconscious mind, whatever language you use, but it's a part of us. And that's the bit where, true embodiment, that unified state, is about integrating the parts. It's about recognizing the purpose that they serve, and recognizing that even the emotions, the good, the bad, the ugly, they all serve a purpose. They're there to show us where we need to focus our energy in terms of healing, where we need to focus our energy in terms of moving on and growing and evolving as well. And I think, one of the things that you talk a lot about is embodiment. And I'd love to hear a bit more around when I'm working with clients, we kind of sit and, if they're struggling with a decision, for example, like what feels good in your body, what feels not so good in your body. How do people start recognizing, tuning into their body? So how do people start tuning into their body and recognizing the signals and the signs that is showing them in terms of what's going on in their lives?
For me, it always starts with awareness, and as I said, most of us, myself included, we come from a state where the majority of our awareness, our energy, and our attention is focused outside of ourselves. That's just the way that we are conditioned as kids. We are raised that way, most of us in Western society especially. So it's first bringing that awareness to the internal. And I always laugh when I share the fact about when we close our eyes, we are closing down 80% of the stimuli coming into our brain. That's like my science nurse brain. When I learned that, I was like, 80% for real, just by closing our eyes. But small things like that, so sitting with your eyes closed for even 60 seconds and tuning in will start to give you a lot of information, setting that intention and connecting to the awareness, like bringing the energy back in. And then from there, the work that I do is really about the inner architecture as a robust interconnection of many, many systems. And that's something that, again, you can deepen into just one piece at a time, perhaps like for me, going to my journey of healing from asthma, I had, as far as inner architecture, most people know the 7 main chakras are energy centers in the body. So I had a block of emotional energy that was blocking my solar plexus and my heart from communicating. So it's one of those things, like it took me time to unpack because I was coming from, okay, I'm closing my eyes, I'm tuning in. What am I even feeling? I don't even know what any of this is. So, that's where it does get to the point, like it's helpful to have someone guiding you, because you can do it the hard way, which most of my life I did things the very hard way. But it's not as fun, as fast, or as efficient. But yeah, it all comes back to awareness and moving that. Your conscious awareness from the outside to the inside is the great first step that I always recommend.
I love that. And I think, as I said as well, it's about that awareness, that consciousness. And I think, but equally, like you start feeling things, but then you're kind of like, what is that? What does that mean? And that's where it's so helpful to have somebody who can guide you through that. And, myself and many of my guests before on this podcast have said that, it's not that, we will always say, and I'll always say, you have the answers within you. You just need sometimes somebody to shine the light and hold the mirror up. And once you can start tapping into that, you become better at it, as you say. Like, I'm a lot better at it, but there's still times where, my ego, my unconscious is not going to let me go deeper because it's wanting to keep me safe. And no matter how hard I try, it's only going to let me go so far. And that's where, I work with coaches and mentors that can really help me to dig deep. But I think one of the things that you spoke about earlier as well was that kind of like in between, and that you don't have to have it all figured out right away. And I came across something, I can't even remember where I came across it a couple of weeks ago, and it was the bit around like when you're on your spiritual healing journey, you don't, it's not that when you have achieved enlightenment, life will be beautiful and you'll be manifesting and all that. It's the same as learning to drive. You learn to drive by driving. So you learn to heal by healing. You're not going to just wake up one morning and be completely healed. You learn by doing. And I think that, it's not about having that end result right away. It's good to have the destination in mind, but it's the action that creates the clarity. Yeah. So what would you say to somebody who's feeling really stuck right now and wants to move forward, know that they want to kind of take that next step, but they don't know what that next step looks like, and they don't, they feel afraid of kind of taking that leap of faith?
Well, I think that comes back, like you were just saying. I mean, you can't actually move forward unless you know where you're standing now, right? Think about even in your body, if you're going to jump across, say, a chalk line on the pavement, what's the first thing you do? You settle yourself, you set yourself, right? You make sure your feet are where in a good position, you're going to gather your energy and you're going to leap. So you have to know where you are. And that sometimes is very difficult for us because we have conditioned our minds, again, to be thinking about the future constantly. And I mean, I wouldn't know to give a percentage, but I would definitely say majority of the people have most of their energy outside of themselves in that imaginary future or thinking about what they're going to do next. And again, this is kind of a hallmark of the mind and the body. We've been taught that they're at odds, and so we're up here thinking we can get it all done by thinking. We're going to do more, we're going to figure it out, but that does keep us out of action. And often it is the action that gives us the next step. So feeling where we are, accepting where we are fully as we can, fully as we can, and then just taking one little step. And then again, okay, I'm here. What's the view from over here? What is the view from that? So acceptance is key. And I believe that we access a lot of that acceptance in the body by coming home to the body.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a grounding way to take any action from, is like, where am I right now? And kind of like anchor yourself there. Because if you're trying to jump from something that's unstable, if you're standing on a wobbly little pillar and you're trying to take that next leap, you're going to be going like this all over the place. Whereas if you've got a solid foundation, you feel more confident to step over into that next level. And I think, that bit that you were saying about like, I totally agree with you. Like we've been brought up and we've been taught, this hustle culture. Productivity means doing more, working faster, working harder. And actually, our nervous systems are so frazzled because it's like, get up in the morning, have your coffee, go, drive to work in the crazy, traffic jams, and, get into work and you've got 100 emails and you've got people at your desk and, whatever it may be. And you're like, oh, you're literally sitting there like this, totally wired. And actually, it's when we're slowing down, when we can kind of like recalibrate our entire frequency to kind of slower healing, and like, it makes such a difference. And like, even like my skincare routine in the mornings, like I used to be like putting my moisturizer on and washing my face and you're brushing my teeth, and now it's like everything is very slow and very deliberate, and I start my day much slower. And I don't turn my laptop on until 10 a.m. in the morning, because thankfully I have that within my gift now to do that. But it doesn't matter what I'm doing in the morning, I do not turn my laptop on until 10 in the morning, and it's a boundary I've set for myself. So I know that in a world where hustle culture is still very prolific and a lot of people are still in that world, it can be hard to then move into the slow lane, when there's expectations on you from family, from friends, from your employers. So what would you say is a kind of really powerful way that people can reclaim some of that energy and that energy for themselves again?
Yeah, I like to, it relates again to our both and theme. I always say, first off, that we are actually slowing down physically so we can speed up vibrationally, because energy, like everything, there are quotients of energy. So if we're doing, our vibration is scattered, our vibration is not coherent. So it's not always necessarily about doing things much slower, although that kind of follows. Once we sink into a coherent vibration, we experience time as feeling slower. We feel more in control of our schedule because we are actually vibrationally more coherent. And it's not that we are in control of our vibration, but it's that we are more unified, more focused, more attentive to ourselves and to the moment. So we can alternate, that's something that, the external world does want us to go really fast, but it helps to have practices to support us in our toolkit throughout the day, where we are coming back, like I call them touchstones often, coming back to that home base. So maybe you do have a frantic morning, kind of chaotic energy where you've got kids and they have to get off to school and they need to get on the bus and this one's going here and you have to get to work and all the things. Okay, great. So you do all of that. And then when you get to your desk, the kids are at school, you're going to go into your email, and there are going to be 50 emails that want you to focus there. you use your trick where, okay, you close your eyes. I always laugh that when at my last consulting gig, which ended a number of months ago, but I was in the office 2 days a week, and I would continue to do my practices, and I would laugh like, oh, the people around me probably think I'm crazy. And I would talk to some of them. It opened up some really interesting conversations. If someone comes over and they're like, you're just sitting there with your eyes closed, or you're just staring out the window. Why were you doing that? And it really is a process of intentionally gathering yourself back to center. And it's something that I love, that we can do a lot of these things. They're so much more simple than the mind tells us. The mind complicates, like, my day is going to be crazy, so therefore I have to be in this state of chaos. No, we're in that both and era. We can have crazy, we can have chaos, and we can have like 60 seconds where we powerfully bring ourselves back to center. And it takes practice, No, it isn't easy at first. Like you, I used to get up and like grab my phone, looking at my phone. Did anybody sign up for this? Was there any likes on my Facebook post? What are the things? But once we really start pulling back and saying to ourselves, okay, if today I was going to slow down a little physically, because I know it was going to give me more on the vibrational, packing that punch of more energy, how would I do that? Sometimes just asking the question, because we do all have support, we have guides, we have higher selves, whatever you want to call them. We do have parts of our consciousness that are more evolved and are ready to answer and kind of guide us in those directions where we can hold it all, and we can have both.
I love that, and it kind of taps into something that you and I spoke about before we started recording. Where I was describing, that I've been intentionally setting my joy frequency to a higher and higher level, and there was a moment, a couple of months ago, where I was just sitting, being, and to me it felt quite flat. But what I realized is it wasn't sadness, it wasn't depression, it was just below the higher frequency that I had been operating at for a number of weeks at that point. So even though I was dipping below, I was still on I suppose on the frequency scale, I was still quite high up. I was probably happy, but because I've lived in joy for so long, just dropping below that felt flat to me. And I think, that giving yourself permission sometimes, that you don't have to have it all together, that yes, there will be frantic times, there will be, demands, especially if you've got families and you do have obligations and responsibilities in a job, for example. But if you have your energetic set point at a certain place, it's easier to recalibrate to that. We're beings, we're going to be moving up and down across that set point, whatever it is. So that's the work. And I suppose, again, come in with your views on this, but in terms of like embodiment and the whole resonance that you speak of, it's about where is that energetic set point for you, and how do you kind of constantly calibrate back to that, but while you're continually raising it as well, because we want to evolve and grow and be as well.
Yeah, and it does. Energy being the basis of everything, like we're constantly working with our own energy, right? Just every single thing we do has the potential to uplift us or to kind of bump our energy down. So again, like we come back to awareness, we pay attention. These are tools that we can use in so many different ways. Coming back to awareness, paying attention and being curious, releasing judgment of ourselves in those moments where we do feel flat, or we do feel, I just went through a phase of, we were talking about it off camera. I was traveling and visiting family, and as we all know, family can be confronting in some ways, because they hold a mirror up to us that is maybe not where we are anymore, maybe where we haven't been, maybe there are a lot of expectations, so I was moving through that. And there were a couple of times on my 10 days away where I felt I was dealing with feelings that I hadn't felt in a while. And consciously, rather than making myself wrong or feeling blame, I would just, emotions being energy, you can transmute them, you can shift them in the moment simply by acknowledging them. I'm feeling really mad right now, or I'm feeling really frustrated or really tired right now. And again, our body being that vessel for the energy, just expressing it, So if maybe I don't want to be expressing in a negative way to a person, it may impact. So maybe I'll journal it. Or maybe I go in the backyard and I, speak it out loud or whatever it is. You don't always have to shout out loud to express and to move and to transmute the energy, but it is important because it helps you move the energy through of those vibrations that might be a little more dense and then pop back up to those higher frequencies like you were talking about. Because if we don't move the energy, the emotion, if we don't allow it to be in motion, then we end up having that getting stuck in our bodies, in our inner architecture, like I was talking about earlier, had happened to me. I had basically, on the physical level, I had a frozen, the diaphragm, the big muscle that's right in the middle of our abdomen, kind of lying beneath the rib cage there. All the energy of the emotions that I was not speaking in my life, and I had a lot of grief, that all sealed into that area. And my actual it does bleed into our physical, right? So we want to express, we want to move the energy, and it really keeps us in that now moment, in that state where we can bounce back up and access joy again. And just not making ourselves wrong for it is so key.
Absolutely, because society has taught us that the feelings and emotions, the big bad ones, negative ones, anger, frustration, rage, that they're all bad and we should be ashamed of them, and even guilt. And I think, as you say, even just naming it can be so powerful, but absolutely moving it, because emotions are energy in motion, and as you say, if they get stuck, then that's where things can get really tricky. Leaning into the whole conversation of energetics, I actually had this conversation with a client last week where she'd been having challenges in a friendship where the friend had kind of constantly been bringing up a certain situation, and my client was finding it triggering, but was able to acknowledge that. But then we spent a bit of time like feeling into like, what is the boundary here? What's the boundary that's looking to be born? And she went from, I need to have a full-blown conversation with my friend to acknowledge the way she's making me feel, to actually, I'm just no longer tolerating this. And without her saying anything to her friend about it, the energetics of the friendship have shifted. The way her friend is showing up in the friendship and the conversations has shifted, and she's not uttered a single word. And that just, again, it amazes me every single time, even though I work with this every single day. Is like, when we shift our energy, when we decide this is a boundary, when we decide this is the way things are going to be for me from now on, your world shape shifts instead of you shape shifting, because I know you use that language. Your environment shape shifts, your relationship shape shift to fit your new energetic set point, your energetic frequency. And I just love that work so much. Do you have any examples of that happening with some of your clients?
Oh yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I always celebrate and I cheer on. It's like, it happens quickly, and sometimes so quickly you won't believe it. Like you were saying, it's like just holding the frequency, holding the energy changes everything. And I was just speaking with a previous client last week, and she has been through a number of things with family dynamics, inner dynamics, and then it culminated in a health issue for her, which really brought her full circle to the point where she was at that boundary moment. I call it, it's a threshold, like, no more. I'm not into this. I'm not putting my energy here anymore. So she started making changes, and among them, her diet, those sorts of things, which can be triggering in a family, you know, if you're feeding other people. And she said, you know, it just was so easy once I was solid within myself. I made the decision, I made the choice. This is what I'm doing, this is what supports me. And then I'm looking at, you know, my husband, and he's doing things differently. And I didn't have to tell him, you're going to do things differently, or we are going to do things differently. And it really is, that's the principle of energy entrainment, they call it. And I see it all the time in my work, because I do work so hands-on with frequency. You know, it is one frequency entrains to another, and you could kind of visualize it as like an EKG wave. We're all familiar with, you know, the heartbeat, boom, 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 boom. Or one thing that I've read about, and I've shared often with clients in the past, and talking to groups, is metronomes. There actually has been a study when they have the metronomes, and you'll have a bunch of them, and they're all going in different rhythms. And then after a while, they entrain to the same rhythm on their own. And we as humans, it's the same thing. If we decide our set point is up here and this is where it's going to be, and we're going to hold it, which, like we were talking about before the recording, like that can be the challenge. But the rest of the world will reflect, you know, it will reflect. And also, I feel like that's a next level kind of a manifestation conversation that a lot of people don't dive into, because again, we've had this polarity dynamic of either or. So they feel like, okay, well, I'm going to do all the things and then life is going to reflect that directly. Like, no, we are also in a relationship with the energy of life, of consciousness. It is a relationship, and we're engaging with it. So for me, the aim has become not to impose my reality on the external, not to manifest in that kind of 1 + 1 = 2 way, which is not bad, but doesn't really give you the joy and excitement factor of engaging with life directly. And that's, you know, the way we do that is like we've been talking about, in our bodies, anchoring in the creative frequencies, those higher frequencies that are available to us all the time. But once you get to that point and you're now, life isn't just reflecting your vibration, you're playing in the field in real time. Like that's what we are set up to do. So it is very joyful, and it is much easier to hold those higher vibrations and to have them be your set point then.
And I love what you've said there at the end about, you know, let's just have fun with it. Let's be playful with it. You know, like, you know, I was having a conversation with a kind of business buddy of mine, and, you know, she was kind of messaging me, checking something out. Do you think I should do it this way or that way? And I was like, you know what? My initial response was giving her a bit of advice and saying, well, maybe this, maybe that. And I was like, you know what? Just test it out. Have fun with it. See how people engage with it, and then you can always change it. You know, it's not either or. No, you don't. Nothing is set in stone. You can shift and change things, and I love that so much. And so, speaking of joy and having fun, what is one way that you prioritize joy in your life, and what advice would you give to women who struggle to do the same?
Well, for me, it really has come down to, I would say, two things. First of all, being able to find joy in our, what I call mundane moments, you know, because those are the spots where we often go unconscious, and we're like, you know, okay, I'm washing the dishes, you know, oh, it's a thing. And our energy is kind of going down the drain with a dirty dish. So because we've set ourselves up now like on default. So bringing in the awareness, what I will recommend, and I do this myself, like, how could this activity, this thing that I'm going to do, that I'm committing to do, that I have to do, whether that be washing dishes or laundry or going to your job or working out, how can I bring my awareness and my attention to it in a way that is joyful? So maybe it's putting on music while you do the dishes. Maybe it's just washing the dishes and going, wow, I have all these dishes because I had an amazing meal with my family, and how good that felt to connect over those things that I prepared for them. Like, and even, you can do something that brings you joy. Like for me lately, it's been podcasts, which, here I am on a podcast. How funny. But I will see something on YouTube or on a podcast that I really am interested in, that lights me up, that gets my brain going. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to wash dishes for 20 minutes. Let me put this podcast on and let me really enjoy the time. So I think when we bring more of ourselves to the moment, we just automatically will enjoy. We remember how to enjoy things, and that is kind of that second part. Like, we make the mundane moments more magical by being present, by being with ourselves, so those are my joy priorities, and I carve out time for them every single day, because who doesn't have time while they're doing the dishes or doing their laundry? We're all going to do those things anyway, so why not make them fun and make them beautiful and meaningful?
I'm giggling to myself because I in the wintertime I usually have my clothes drying indoors, and it's in front of a big window that looks out onto the main road, and I've usually got my music playing and I'm usually dancing and I never stop to really look outside because I'm in the moment for myself, but there must be people walking up the street going, women dancing in the window in the street. But I have a great time when I'm doing the laundry. I put my tunes on and I'm just in a zone. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I mean, in the in the end, isn't that what we really all are here to do, right? Whatever we're trying to learn, it's about having more joy and more fun and bringing that into our lives, like into our relationships, into our everyday. Because if we can do it, over here when we're meditating or whatever it is we're doing, like, that's great. But if it doesn't trickle down into our real life, it really doesn't have that impact, So it is about bringing, again, like bringing the spirit into our biology, bringing all of ourselves back into the moment and accessing the limitless possibilities that are here for us in the now.
And again, it just comes back to that both and, you can be doing something as mundane as the dishes or the laundry, and you can have fun with it, and you can be joyful doing it.
Yeah.
So I've loved all your stories and your insights, Angela. It's been amazing, and so many takeaways. But one thing that really stood out with me was, on the vein of the both and, it isn't even both and, it's how you can have it all. You truly, genuinely can have it all. You just need to set that intention for yourself and shift your energy within that. And yeah, that takes work. It's not just sometimes it is just a conscious decision, but sometimes you do need to go there and you do need to heal some of those past hurts and traumas, and move that energy through you. Because as you said with your asthma, for example, that had become stuck and you had to make a very conscious effort to shift that for yourself. And then you can have like springboarded into the next level again. So I am sure that my listeners will want to find out more about you and what you do. So where's the best place they can find you and learn about your work?
Right now, the two best places would be Facebook, just my name, my personal profile, Angela Bargerstock at Facebook. And then I also have a budding YouTube account that I am devoting more attention to. And I'm really excited about building that, which is Quantum Catalyst 1. And I'm sure Debbie will put all the info. And there, just one more thing that I wanted to share on what you were talking about that came through to be shared with the everyone that listens, is that, all of the joy and the worthiness and the work we do, the foundation of it all is just knowing, believing that we are worth it, that we are worth it, that we are meant to be in this state of well-being, and that's part of our birthright. Like, we are worth it just because we are, not because we earned it or we got it right or we figured it out or we did all the right things or we showed up the right ways. Like, we are worth it simply by being ourselves. So that is something that If you can connect to that and believe and feel that in your body for just a couple of moments each day, that's a great place to start.
What a beautiful way to end the podcast, and so aligned with what it's all about. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your work with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Your Worth, Your Way. I know that you'll be walking away feeling inspired and ready to embrace your worth and prioritize your joy. If you love this episode, I would be so grateful if you could leave a review or share it with someone who needs a little bit of encouragement today. And don't forget to hit that follow button so that you never miss another episode. And you can connect with me, find out more about the podcast, my guests, and what I do at debbielucas.me/links. And if you don't already, connect with me on your favorite social media platform. I'd love to hear your thoughts and continue the conversation there. And until next time, remember that you are worthy exactly as you are.